Hi jugglers! This tutorial will be on synchronized siteswap. That's siteswap where both hands throw at the same time. By the end of this tutorial, I hope that you'll have learned 3 things. First, how to take a string of numbers that you see on paper and juggle it. Second, I want you to be able to check the validity of a siteswap and make sure that it can be juggled. Third, I want you to be able to see a pattern and figure out what the siteswap is. Now, I will be assuming that you already know vanilla siteswap. If you don't, click the link here for a tutorial on it. To achieve these goals, I'm going to be breaking up the tutorial into 4 sections. In the first, I'll describe the differences between synchronous siteswap and vanilla siteswap, which you're already used to. Then, to drive that point home, we'll go through a bunch of common examples. After that, we'll talk about validity, how to tell if you can actually juggle the siteswap. And finally, like last time, we'll end with a fun interactive quiz. The first difference between synchronous and asynchronous siteswaps is that in synchronous siteswaps, you have 2 throws happening at the same time. So, you need to write that down somehow. We do that by putting it in a bracket and putting a comma in between the 2 values. So, instead of 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, you wind up something like this. Bracket, 4, comma, 4, end bracket. And that looks like this. Within these brackets, the first number or the second number represent which hand you're using. It doesn't matter if you assign your left or right hand to the first number or the second number, as long as you're consistent. An interesting consequence of this is that you lose all of the odd value siteswaps. There are a lot of ways of proving that to yourself, but this one's my favorite. In all siteswap, a beat goes by whenever you throw. So, in asynchronous siteswap, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you throw a 3, you know you're going to be throwing that 3 beats later. However, in synchronous siteswaps, you're doing 2 throws at once, which means 2 beats go by every time you do that. 2, 4, 6, etc. So there's just no room for 3s. They would go in between beats, and that doesn't jive with siteswap. One similarity between synchronous and asynchronous siteswaps is that you can still use the averaging rule to find the number of balls. Take the average of all the numbers in the siteswap, and that'll be the number of balls that siteswap requires. But if you take out all the odd numbers, does that mean that throws can never cross? Nope. Instead, you just mark the even value with an x at the end. For example, 4x would look something like that. A synchronous shower with 3 balls would be a 4x, comma, 2x. They're all even values, but every throw crosses because every value has an x after it. Here's a bracket 4, comma 4, end bracket. Notice that they're both being thrown at the same time and they're not crossing. If you wanted them to cross, you just put an x after both of the 4s, turning it into a bracket 4x, comma 4x, end bracket. Similarly, here's a bracket 2, comma 2, end bracket. If you wanted these to cross, it would be bracket 2x, comma 2x, end bracket. A 2x is very much like a 1 in asynchronous siteswap, but it takes a little bit longer. Here we have a bracket 4x, comma 2x, end bracket, which is normally referred to as a synchronous 3-ball shower. Remember that the assignments of the right and left hand are arbitrary, so you could switch this around and do the 4x with your left hand and the 2x with your right hand. Let's get a little trickier now. For each set of throws, there's a higher crossing throw and a lower non-crossing throw. And if you look closely, you'll find that they alternate hands. The right hand throws a 6x, then a 4, and the left hand throws a 4 and then a 6x. So the siteswap here is bracket 6x, comma 4, end bracket. Bracket 4, comma 6x, end bracket. For the sake of convenience, whenever we have a siteswap that repeats but with the order of the two numbers inside each set of brackets switched, we mark it with an asterisk. It's important to note that we're not just mirroring the siteswap. We're switching the order of the values inside each set of brackets. When talking about synchronized siteswaps, jugglers will almost never say bracket or comma. For example, instead of bracket 4x comma 2x end bracket, they'll just say 4x 2x, because the context implies that the brackets and commas are there. For certain siteswaps, people also tend to cut off the asterisk. For example, even though 6x4 isn't a valid siteswap, everybody refers to 6x4 asterisk as just 6x4. For clarity, I'm going to continue saying bracket and comma, but when you hit the streets, don't worry about it. The last pattern, and this one's a real mouthful. Bracket 8, comma 2x, end bracket, bracket 4, comma 2x, end bracket, asterisk, also known as a 4-ball box. I hope the usefulness of the asterisk is starting to become apparent. If I had to say that whole thing again, with the values switched, I'd be taking another 10 takes doing it. In my opinion, the easiest way to check validity for synchronous siteswaps is with a ladder diagram, and the easiest way to learn how to use a ladder diagram is with an example. So let's start out with bracket 4x, comma 4, end bracket. Each of these dots represents a hand at a certain time. They're stacked too high because you're doing 2 throws at once. Let's say that the top dot represents the hand that throws the first of each set of numbers. So here, the 4x. Remember, that choice is arbitrary, but we have to pick something. So let's get started with bracket 4x, comma 4, end bracket. A 4x takes 4 beats to land and crosses, so we draw a line to the other side 2 dots later. You use 2 dots instead of 4 because there are 2 beats happening for each stack of dots. Now let's throw the 4. It takes 4 beats and goes to the same hand. We can immediately see we have a problem. Both balls are landing in the same hand at the same time. This means that there's a collision, and therefore it's not a valid siteswap. We're going to get trickier now, so hold on to your hat. For the next example, we'll use bracket 8, comma 2x, end bracket, bracket 4, comma 2x, end bracket. If we follow the same rules as last time though, it shouldn't be a problem. Starting out with the 8 that lands 4 sets of dots later in the same hand, and then the 2x that lands 1 set of dot later in the other hand. Then you move on to the 4, which lands 2 sets of dots later in the same hand, and again the 2x, which lands 1 set of dots later in the opposite hand. We see that we're doing well so far, no collisions yet. But you know, I'm not convinced, so let's keep going. We throw another 8 from the same hand as last time, and another 2x, again from the same hand as last time. Oh, but now we're in trouble. We got a collision when we threw the 2x, which means that this is not a valid siteswap. How about just tacking an asterisk at the end of that last siteswap? So instead of this, it now becomes this. You may remember that siteswap from earlier in this video, and I was juggling it, so we're pretty sure it's a valid pattern. But let's check it for practice. I'm going to be drawing in the lines 2 at a time now, because that better resembles how the pattern actually works. So, like last time, we start with our 8 and 2x. We're good so far. Now, the 4 2x. Sure, we're still good so far, but we knew that from the last example. Remember that the asterisk tells you to switch the order of the values inside each set of brackets. So, the 8 is now from the bottom set of dots, and the 2x is now from the top set of dots. Similarly, the 4 is now from the bottom set of dots, and the 2x is again from the top set of dots. And now we're back to where we began. For those of you who are still skeptical, or for those of you who like really weird and symmetric wallpaper, here's the entire diagram filled out. You could keep going, and you'd never get a collision, which means that this is a valid siteswap. Finally, for everybody's favorite part of my videos, the quiz. I'll juggle a siteswap and give you 3 options. Click the option that describes the pattern that I'm juggling.